I hope you've enjoyed the last two videos of me reading Reddit stories while playing Minecraft. And this is the third one. So if this is your first time, welcome. But if you've listened to my other two videos, welcome back. Today in the video, we're actually going to be mining a little bit. We're not trying to mine too much right now because we actually have a horror mod installed called the Cave Dweller. And two of my buddies that are on this realm actually have no idea that we have installed this mod. So we're trying to stay out of the caves, let them do the mining so they can have the encounters and kind of play a little bit of a funny prank on them. But we need some diamonds, so we're going to go down there first. After that, in the video, I'll be doing a little bit of fishing, and then I'll get on my horse and do some exploring and find a few villages. But without further ado, let's get into some Reddit stories. So the first Reddit story that we're going to go over and read is Am I the asshole for exposing my fiance at our wedding after I learned he had two other fiancés? I genuinely do not know if I've crossed a line anymore because half my family thinks I overreacted while strangers online keep calling me a legend. I'm 29 female. My ex-fiance Dylan is 33 male. We were together for almost 4 years and engaged for one. From the outside, our relationship looked perfect. He was attentive, remembered birthdays, left handwritten notes in my lunch, and somehow convinced everyone, including myself, that I had found the nicest guy alive. My parents adored him. My little brother called him the cool future uncle. Even my dog preferred him over me. Planning the wedding was stressful, but Dylan always insisted he would handle the complicated stuff. Don't worry about the vendors, he'd tell me. I've got the honeymoon. I'll coordinate with the photographer. At the time, I thought I was lucky. Turns out, he just didn't want me asking too many questions. About 6 weeks before the wedding, I received a DM on Instagram from a woman I'd never met. It simply read, Hi, I think we're dating the same man. Naturally, I assumed it was spam. Then, she added a picture. It was Dylan. Not only that, it was Dylan proposing to her on a beach with the exact same ring. I laughed because I thought it had to be photoshopped. She immediately video called me. When I answered, she held up framed photos of them stretching back 2 years, trips, holidays, matching Halloween costumes. Then she asked me the question that made my stomach drop. So, when's your wedding? I told her. She went silent, then whispered, Mine is 2 weeks after yours. Neither of us spoke for almost a minute. Eventually, we exchanged screenshots, receipts, flight confirmations, texts, pictures, everything lined up. We were both engaged to the same man. We decided to meet in person. She brought another surprise, a third woman. Wow. This is getting crazy quick, guys. She apologized for springing it on me, but said there was something I needed to see. The third woman walked in carrying a binder. She looked exhausted. Without saying hello, she placed 3 engagement announcements on the table. One was mine, one belonged to the first woman, and one belonged to her. 3 separate engagements, 3 different dates, 3 different cities, same groom. Apparently, Dylan traveled constantly for work. In reality, his travel schedule was carefully orchestrated so each of us believed he was visiting clients. He had separate apartments, separate friend groups, separate stories. He even celebrated Christmas 3 times. We compared timelines for hours and uncovered dozens of overlapping lies. The craziest part, he apparently proposed to all 3 of us using nearly identical speeches. He reused jokes, song lyrics, even the exact phrase, I knew by the third date I'd marry you. Wow. This is pretty crazy. Sorry, I'll stop interrupting, get back to the story, but crazy. At this point, none of us wanted revenge. We wanted answers. So we hired a private investigator. Within 10 days, we got them. He wasn't secretly married. He wasn't in witness protection. He wasn't an undercover agent. He was simply addicted to living multiple lives. According to the investigator, he'd done versions of this before. Not always engagements, but overlapping long-term relationships that sometimes lasted years. One former girlfriend even moved across the country for him while he simultaneously was living with someone else. The investigator looked me dead in the eyes and said, "In 20 years, I've never seen someone manage this calendar this efficiently." We debated confronting him. Instead, we came up with another plan. We all agreed to let the wedding proceed. My family knew nothing, neither did his. The guests arrived, music played, flowers everywhere. I walked down the aisle smiling. Dylan looked emotional. The officiant began, then reached the point where objections could be raised. I lifted my hand. I actually have something to share first. The room went silent. The projector behind us switched on. Instead of childhood photos, a slideshow appeared. Picture 1, Dylan proposing to me. Picture 2, Dylan proposing to woman number 2. Picture 3, Dylan proposing to woman number 3. Gasps. Confusion. Then came screenshots of matching text messages copied almost word for word. Then identical vacation photos taken days apart. Then receipts. Then calendars. Finally, the screen displayed all 3 engagement dates side by side. You could hear people whispering. His mother stood up and asked what was happening. That's when the other 2 women walked through the side doors wearing white dresses, not wedding gowns, just white enough to make the point. One sat in the front row, the other folded her arms beside my maid of honor. Dylan turned completely pale. He tried saying there had been misunderstandings, then claimed they were cousins helping with the surprise. Nobody believed him. The officiant quietly stepped off the stage. One of Dylan's groomsmen uttered, "Dude, are you serious?" His best man walked out entirely. His own father buried his hands in his face. Meanwhile, my grandmother started clapping, not politely, like someone had just watched the ending of a movie she'd been waiting for. Dylan grabbed the microphone and begged me to talk privately. I declined. Instead, I thanked everyone for attending and announced that since the catering had already been paid for, they should stay and enjoy dinner. The DJ, apparently sensing opportunity, immediately switched to upbeat music. The open bar became very popular. People started taking selfies with the abandoned altar. One cousin requested, "I Will Survive." The DJ actually played it. At one point, the photographer asked if I still wanted pictures. I said yes. So the 3 former fiancés posed together while holding bouquets, while Dylan sat alone in the background looking miserable. Those became my favorite photos from the day. The aftermath was chaos. His family apologized repeatedly. Mine offered to help me move out. The venue staff admitted afterward that they had never seen guests have so much fun at a canceled wedding. As for Dylan, he vanished from social media for months. Word eventually spread that he'd relocated to another state. I've since become close friends with the other 2 women. Every year, on what was supposed to be our wedding anniversary, the 3 of us meet for brunch and joke that splitting one terrible fiance into thirds was still a bad deal. Some relatives insist humiliating him publicly was unnecessary and that I should have canceled quietly. Others argued he orchestrated years of deception and simply faced the consequences of his own actions. So, am I the asshole for exposing my fiance at the altar after discovering I wasn't the only bride? Absolutely not. This lady was definitely not the asshole. Um, I don't even understand how some relatives could insist that humiliating him publicly wasn't unnecessary. Because literally he was ruining the OP's life as well as the 2 other women. He was going to marry all 3 of them. And who knows, he might have had other women involved as well. So, no, the OP was definitely not the asshole, at least in my opinion. She could have done it quietly, but I think it was way better to go out with a bang like she did. So, yeah, definitely not the asshole. That's a great story. The next story we have today is, am I the asshole for telling my entire family the truth at Thanksgiving after my brother stole my identity for 3 years? Okay, before I start, that's a crazy title. All right, let's get started. I'm 31 male, and for the past few months, my phone has not stopped ringing because half my family thinks I destroyed my younger brother's life over a simple misunderstanding. Personally, I think spending 3 years pretending to be me qualifies a little more than a misunderstanding. For context, my brother Jake has always been the golden child. If he got a C, my parents blamed the teacher. If I got an A minus, they wanted to know what happened to the other 3%. Growing up, he borrowed everything: clothes, money, my bike, my gaming console. Nothing was ever really mine. It was always share with your brother. When I moved across the country after college, I finally had some distance. I built a good career in software, bought a condo, and mostly kept to myself. Jake stayed home and bounced between jobs. 3 years ago, I started noticing weird things. My furniture company called asking when I wanted my sectional delivered. I hadn't ordered one. A gym in another state emailed me about missed payments. I'd never been a member. Then there was a dentist reminding me of an appointment I definitely hadn't scheduled. Each time it seemed like an isolated mistake. I'd call, explain they had the wrong person, and move on. Then, my credit score dropped almost 100 points overnight. I pulled my report and nearly fell out of my chair. There were store cards, personal loans, and utility accounts I had never opened. I immediately froze everything and filed disputes. The fraud investigator asked a question I'll never forget. Is there anyone close to you who you would know that has your social security number? My stomach dropped. Years earlier, my parents had kept everyone's documents in one filing cabinet. Jake absolutely could have copied mine. I didn't want to believe it, so I flew home without telling anyone. I started by visiting the address tied to one of my fraudulent utility bills. A woman answered and told me Jake rented the basement apartment. When I asked whose name the account was under, she looked at me funny. Yours. She invited me inside because she thought I was Jake. On the kitchen counter sat unopened mail addressed to me. Not him. Me. I took pictures and left before he got home. When I confronted him over the phone, he laughed. He actually laughed. Dude, it's basically family credit, he said. Family credit. As if identity theft worked like borrowing a lawnmower. He insisted he always planned to pay everything back. Except he hadn't. Collection agencies were calling me, not him. The next few weeks became a blur of police reports, affidavits, bank investigations, and lawyers. My parents begged me not to involve law enforcement. My mom cried that Jake would never recover from a criminal record. I asked if they were equally worried about my financial future. Silence. Eventually, they convinced me to hold off if Jake cooperated. He promised to. Instead, he doubled down. He continued opening accounts after I confronted him. The investigator later said that that was one of the boldest things he had ever seen. So I stopped protecting him. I submitted every document, every screenshot, every text where he admitted using my information. The case quickly moved after that. Jake was arrested. Some relatives called me vindictive. Others quietly admitted they weren't surprised. I skipped the next few family gatherings until Thanksgiving rolled around. My parents insisted everyone wanted to heal. Against my better judgment, I went. Dinner was awkward but peaceful until my uncle stood up and toasted Jake. He praised him for overcoming hard times and criticized people who hold grudges instead of forgiving family. Several heads turned towards me. Then my cousin chimed in that I should have handled everything privately. Apparently, the story circulated was that I'd reported Jake over a paperwork mix-up. A paperwork mix-up! I stared around the table, realizing almost nobody knew what had actually happened, so I asked permission to say something. Before anyone could object, I mirrored my laptop onto the living room TV. First slide, my credit report. Second, utility bills opened in my name. Third, text from Jake literally saying, I used your credit because mine was maxed. Fourth, photos from his apartment with stacks of mail addressed to me. Then I displayed the spreadsheet my attorney helped compile. 37 fraudulent accounts. Total damage, just over $184,000. Holy cow, I didn't realize it was that much. The room went completely silent. My aunt slowly put down her fork. One cousin whispered, wait, all of that was him? My grandmother, who had defended Jake for years, looked at my parents and asked, you knew about this? Neither answered. Then the biggest twist happened. My uncle, the one who had just lectured me about forgiveness, quietly admitted Jake had also borrowed $20,000 from him. What? Including a fake business proposal. Holy cow. Another cousin confessed Jake had sold him a motorcycle that didn't legally belong to him. Suddenly, everyone had a story. Within 10 minutes, the conversation transformed from, "Why can't you forgive my brother?" to, "How many people has he lied to?" My parents looked devastated, not because of what Jake had done, because they realized that they could no longer hide it. Thanksgiving dinner ended early. The turkey barely got touched. As people left, several relatives apologized to me for believing Jake's version of events. One even admitted she'd been avoiding me because she thought I'd ruined his life out of spite. Months later, the criminal case concluded. The judge ordered restitution and probation rather than prison, citing Jake's lack of prior convictions. He had also had to attend financial counseling and perform community service. Our relationship hasn't recovered. We haven't spoken in over a year. My parents keep asking if I'll forgive him and give him another chance. I tell them trust isn't something you rebuild with words after someone spends years pretending to be you. So, am I the asshole for exposing my brother to the entire family after they kept insisting I was the one tearing the family apart? Absolutely not, in my opinion, because at the point of the Thanksgiving dinner, the family all thought he was the asshole, which he absolutely was not. But they obviously hadn't heard the other side of the story, the full story. And once they heard it, obviously everyone switched sides. So absolutely not. The brother is definitely the asshole for first off having bad credit, ruined his credit, and then tried to ruin his own brother's. That is absolutely crazy. So again, in this scenario, the OP is definitely not the asshole, but definitely a crazy story, but happy. It sounds like everything worked out in the end. Hopefully, with the restitution in place, the OP will get all of their money back. Hopefully, rather sooner rather than later. All right, guys. Sorry if you had to watch me freak out in the cave with the cave dweller popping up. That probably happened a little earlier, but it was still kind of a scary moment. But yeah, we'll get into that third story now. Definitely going to hold off on mining until my buddies get pranked and get an encounter with it. So, but that'll be enjoyable. Hopefully, I'll be able to record that. But for the third and final story here, am I the asshole for evicting my sister and her family after I found out she'd been charging me rent to live in my own house? I'm 34 male, and my family has been calling me heartless for the past month because I made my own niece homeless. That's not what happened. At least, I don't think it is. 5 years ago, I inherited my grandfather's house after he passed away. It wasn't a mansion by any means, but it was paid off, sat on a few acres of land, and had been in our family for decades. My grandfather and I were extremely close. I was the only grandchild who regularly visited him, helped maintain the property, and drove him to appointments. When the will was read, everyone was shocked that he left me the house. My sister Lauren was especially upset. She insisted our grandfather had always intended for the family to keep the home, which somehow translated to her believing she should live there. At the time, I was living across the country for work, so I made what I thought was a reasonable decision. Lauren, her husband, and their 2 kids could stay in the house temporarily as long as they maintained it, paid the utilities, and didn't make any major changes without asking. There was no rent. I didn't want money. I just wanted someone to keep the place from sitting empty. The first year went smoothly. Lauren would send pictures of the garden. The kids built a treehouse. Everything looked great. Then, communication slowly dropped off. Whenever I asked about repairs, she'd tell me everything was fine. Whenever I suggested visiting, she'd say the timing wasn't good because the kids had school, someone was sick, or they were remodeling. I accepted those excuses because flying across the country wasn't easy. Last winter, my company announced permanent remote work. I immediately decided to move back home and live in my grandfather's house. When I told Lauren, there was a long silence. Then she said that might be difficult. I laughed because I thought she was joking. She wasn't. She explained the kids had settled in, they'd painted every room, and moving would be disruptive. I reminded her the arrangement was always temporary. She asked if I could wait another couple of years. I said no. After several tense phone calls, we agreed she'd be out in 60 days. Or so I thought. 3 weeks later, one of my grandfather's old neighbors called. He casually asked if I'd raised the rent again. I was confused. What rent? The rent your sister charges the family renting the guest house. My grandfather's property had a detached guest cottage. It had always been empty. Apparently, not anymore. I asked him to explain. He told me a young couple had been living there for almost 2 years and regularly mentioned paying Lauren every month. I nearly dropped my phone. I drove home that weekend without telling anyone. The first thing I saw pulling into the driveway was a professionally printed wood sign, Maple Hill Estates. I had never named the property. The second thing I noticed was the guest cottage had a family living in it. Kids' bikes, patio furniture, 2 cars. The third thing nearly made me turn around and leave. The main house was listed on a local historical tour brochure with Lauren identified as the owner. Owner, not caretaker, not occupant, owner. I knocked on the cottage door. The couple who answered were incredibly nice. They proudly explained they had been renting from Lauren for almost 2 years and loved the place. When I asked how much they paid, the husband hesitated before answering. $1,600 a month. I thanked them and walked away before I said something regrettable. Then I went to the main house. Lauren answered, looking like she'd seen a ghost. Before she could speak, I asked one question. How much money have you made off my property? She denied everything, then claimed the cottage income only covered maintenance, then admitted she had kept some of it, then admitted most of it. Eventually, her husband quietly confessed they'd been renting out both the cottage and portions of the barn for storage. Oh my goodness. So it gets worse. Anyway, continuing with the story. They'd also hosted weddings on the property and seasonal photo shoots and holiday events without telling me. I spent the next several days digging through public advertisements. Turns out Maple Hill Estates had social media pages with thousands of followers. There were drone videos, wedding packages, photography bookings. One bridal blog even featured Lauren, the owner of the venue. The estimated revenue over 3 years was well into six figures. I confronted her with screenshots. She bursted into tears and insisted they needed the money. I asked why she never simply asked to buy the property or propose a partnership. Her answer floored me. Because you would probably say no. She wasn't wrong, but fraud seemed like an odd alternative. I immediately hired an attorney. Within days, formal eviction notices went out. The guest cottage tenants were devastated but cooperative once they learned the truth. I helped them find another rental and refunded part of their last month's payment out of my own pocket because they'd acted in good faith. Lauren was furious. She told everyone I was throwing children onto the street over greed. Family members started calling nonstop. One aunt left a voicemail saying my grandfather would be ashamed of me. I almost believed her. Then another surprise arrived. The attorney uncovered insurance paperwork listing Lauren as the legal property representative. She had submitted documents implying she possessed authority she never had. That changed everything. The situation escalated from a family dispute into something much more serious. Word spread through town. Wedding vendors demanded refunds. Clients threatened lawsuits. People who had booked events wanted to know why the owner was suddenly being evicted. Local gossip exploded. For weeks, strangers recognized me at the grocery stores and asked if I was the real owner. Eventually, the case settled before trial. Lauren agreed to vacate immediately, surrender all profits from future bookings, and dissolve the business. She also signed documents acknowledging she had no ownership interest in the property. The day she moved out, I walked through every room. My grandfather's old workshop had become a gift shop. The dining room had a commercial espresso bar. The attic where we had built model airplanes together had been converted into a bridal suite painted bright pink. I won't lie, I cried. Not because of the money, because the place barely felt like a home anymore. It took months to restore everything. I replanted the gardens, removed the signs, tore down the promotional banners. The biggest surprise came a few weeks later when one of the photographers who used to shoot weddings emailed me a photo he had taken years earlier. It showed my grandfather sitting on the porch with me as a kid, eating ice cream. On the back, he'd written, "A house belongs to the people who protect it." I framed it and hung it in the hallway. To this day, my parents insist I should have forgiven Lauren because family helps family. My response is always the same. I did help family. I let them live there for free. They turned my grandfather's legacy into a business and never told me. So, Am I the asshole for evicting my sister after discovering she had been secretly making money from my house while pretending it was hers? In this case, again, absolutely not the asshole. The sister, again, is the asshole for sure. If we really look at it, all she had to really do is tell her brother, "Hey, I'm really thinking about maybe making this business," and see what he would have said. He probably, like he said, would have said no, but it's always better to be open and honest than to try to hide something, especially when your brother has, really given you a great opportunity, letting you live in the home rent free for years, and then you take advantage of him by not only living there rent free for years, but then you open your own business and make six figures, over six figures, in the 3 years that you, 2 or 3 years that you live there. So again, in this case, he is definitely not the asshole. Sister is definitely the asshole. And the family should understand that, this house was sentimental to the OP, and his sister went and changed everything about it, and it took him a long time to renovate it, to get it back to what it once was, which meant a lot to him, obviously. And I like the ending where the photographer sent him the photograph, with it written on the back that, it was meant to be protected by the home. What was it exactly? A house belongs to the people who protect it. And, it really makes sense because that's what the OP was trying to do, and that's what he ended up doing by replanting the gardens and renovating the place back to what it was. But alright guys, I think that's going to do it for me today. If you like this video, please leave a like. Comment if there's any way that I can make these videos better. This is only my third attempt at reading Reddit stories while playing some Minecraft, so if there's any way that I can improve for you guys, please let me know. And as I always say, baby Jamie, shout out to him. You can't spell subscribe without you. So I really appreciate it if you'd subscribe, and like I said, just thank you guys for watching. I really appreciate it. It means a lot. All right, talk to you later. Peace.